Hi everyone, my name's Mark Pegrum, and I'm here today to talk to you about using mobile devices to teach language in the developed and developing world. I'd love to be there in person with you in Russia, but I'm actually at home in Perth, Western Australia. It's not quite nightfall here yet, but we are 4 hours ahead of your time zone in Tambov. Here I am in my home office, from where I'll be talking to you about a series of interrelated topics. We'll look at types of mobile learning and agendas for mobile learning, and we'll finish up by looking at some case studies of very successful mobile language learning projects. So, if you're settled in, let's make a start. In many ways, the year 2013, last year, was an important one in international telecommunications. In 2013, the number of internet-enabled mobile devices surpassed the number of desktop and laptop computers. In 2013, the percentage of internet traffic coming from mobile devices reached 20% globally. Actually, in 2014, we have already surpassed 25%. Also in 2013, the number of smartphones being sold around the world surpassed the number of feature phones being sold. That's right. There are now more smartphones being sold globally than basic or feature phones. And that's really good news for education, because it means that in time, in more and more places around the world, teachers and students will be able to make use of the affordances of smartphones to support education. But it's going to be a long time before most people in the world have access to a smartphone. As can be seen in this chart by Mary Mika and Liang Wu, it's estimated that at the end of 2013, there were some 1.5 billion smartphone users out of more than 5 billion mobile phone users. In actual fact, these figures refer not to users, but to subscriptions. And because one user may have more than one subscription, the overall numbers are probably slightly lower. Yes, smartphones are spreading, and they're spreading rapidly, but the installed base of feature phones is so large that it will take a very long time for them to reach the majority of the population, if indeed that happens. When it comes to education, it's very tempting to design all mobile learning with smartphones and other smart devices in mind. But we should remember that for quite some time to come, many people in the world will not have access to those kinds of devices. So when we're thinking about mobile learning, we do need to consider people who are using more basic devices, as well as people who are using smart devices. In my talk today, I want to approach the topic of using mobile devices to teach language from 3 different directions. In fact, I'm going to stick with the number 3 throughout. Firstly, I want to talk to you about 3 types of mobile learning which reflect different levels of mobility. I'll then go on to talk about 3 different agendas for mobile learning that we see in operation around the world. Finally, I want to share with you 3 brief case studies of very successful mobile language learning projects from various places in the world. These will allow us to talk about how the 3 types of mobile learning and the 3 agendas for mobile learning are put into practice in real-world contexts. So let's kick off then by talking about 3 types of mobile learning. First up, we have learning where the devices are mobile, indeed they're mobile by definition, but the learners and the learning experience are not. An obvious example here would be connected classrooms. More and more institutions, instead of upgrading hardwired computer labs, are choosing to buy in class sets of tablets. When students use those tablets, though, they often sit still at their desks much as they would with a desktop computer. It's important that the devices are mobile and that the sets of tablets can be moved from classroom to classroom so that they can be used by different groups of students. But when the learning is taking place, neither the learners nor the learning experience are mobile. We can see a similar example when the devices become the classrooms, as they often do in distance learning. So we know that for many learners who are studying at a distance, their mobile device becomes their gateway to their studies. But typically, when they are studying, the learner is not moving around with their device. They're sitting in one place, at home or in the office, where they can concentrate. Again, it's important that the devices are mobile, that they can be moved from home to the office and vice versa. But while the learning is taking place, neither the learners nor the learning experience are actually mobile. Mobile learning becomes more sophisticated when the learners also become mobile. So, imagine the teacher in that connected classroom saying to the students, "Right, when you learn something new, I want you to get up out of your seat, move around the room, and find someone else who hasn't yet learnt the same thing. Then share what you've discovered." Now, we're introducing a very minimal amount of mobility here, but it's really important because it underpins the kind of active, collaborative learning that is very difficult to do in a hardwired computer lab. Or imagine a situation where a distance learner is actually learning on the go, perhaps on the bus or the train home from work. Again, this could be very important because perhaps it's only by filling those spaces of downtime in everyday life that this person is able to become a learner in the first place. So here are a couple of examples where both the devices and the learners are mobile. But in neither of these cases is the learning experience itself mobile. Mobile learning becomes most sophisticated when the devices, the learners, and the learning experience are all mobile. So again, imagine the teacher in that connected classroom saying to the students, "Okay, I want you to get outside the classroom, take a walk around the town, locate some historical buildings, take photos of those buildings, annotate them with information about when they were constructed, and then upload your annotated photos to the class blog." Suddenly, the real-world environment is becoming part of the learning experience. The same thing is true when it comes to just-in-time learning, whether in push or pull mode. This is all about interacting with and learning from our real-world environment right now and right here. But perhaps the ultimate example at the cutting edge of contemporary educational technology development is augmented reality learning. You may possibly have seen images like this one before. This is the Wikitude augmented reality browser. We are looking through the lens of the camera on a smart device at a London street scene. The Wikitude browser is annotating that street scene with all kinds of information that can scaffold our interaction with the places and even the people around us. Here's another example, this time from the Singaporean CBD. The gentleman on the left-hand side is wearing augmented reality glasses, connected, probably by Bluetooth, to a smart device in his pocket. Looking through the lenses of those glasses, he can see all kinds of annotations added to the landscape around him by the Wikitude augmented reality browser. So over on the right-hand side, for example, he can see some general information about the Singapore River. Right in front of him, he can see the pathway that he needs to follow to get to the new Asia Bar. And on the left-hand side, he can see a car advertisement which is projecting a 3D model of the car that's being advertised. So it's probably obvious here that there are all kinds of educational possibilities. Possibilities, that is, for immersive augmented reality learning in a real-world context. So, looking across these three levels, we can see that there are very different levels of sophistication involved. When we get to the last level, where the devices, the learners, and the learning experience are all mobile, we are talking about a very high level of sophistication. Or, to put it another way, we're talking about making a very high level of use of the affordances of mobile devices. But that means that we need state-of-the-art devices, and they of course have a low level of affordability. This, it seems to me, is the fundamental tension in the whole field of mobile learning. Where we make a high level of use of the affordances of mobile devices to support mobile learning, those devices will typically have a low level of affordability. Conversely, where the devices have a high level of affordability, they are much more basic, and they offer a much lower level of affordances that can be exploited in education. This is where we see some major differences open up between the developing and the developed world. We've now talked about three types of mobile learning and what they mean in terms of affordability and affordances. Let's now move on to look at three agendas for mobile learning that we see in evidence around the world, and we'll consider how they relate to affordability and affordances. The first agenda is driven by a desire to transform teaching and learning. That means, at the very least, pushing learning in a direction which is more active and more collaborative. It could mean pushing learning in a direction which is more situated, embedded, and immersive, as in the case of augmented reality learning. You may well have heard of the TPAC framework by Mishra and Kohler, or the SAMA framework by Ruben Fuentedura. These are not just about mobile technologies, but they've become very well known as frameworks to help teachers incorporate all digital technologies, including mobile tools, into their classrooms in such a way as to transform learning. Secondly, some people see a role for mobile technologies in developing 21st century skills. These are the skills that we all need to function effectively in our contemporary digitally mediated social lives and workplaces. You may well have come across the American Partnership for 21st Century Skills, which promotes these kinds of literacies. And certainly in my own recent work on digital literacies, together with my co-authors Gavin Dudney and Nikki Hockley, we've been arguing that it's not enough for language teachers nowadays just to teach language. Rather, we have to teach students about the many digital channels through which they will have access to language and through which they will need to learn to express themselves. Thirdly, there are those who see a role for mobile technologies in a broad social justice agenda. This is essentially about getting education into the hands of as many people as possible, particularly people who have been marginalized from education in the past. You're no doubt aware of the work of UNESCO in this area or of the GSMA in London. As we look across these three agendas, it's probably evident that they mean very different things in terms of affordability and affordances. If you're talking about transforming teaching and learning, and to some extent, if you're talking about developing 21st century skills, then the chances are that you're talking about making a high level of use of the affordances of mobile devices, and those devices will consequently have a low level of affordability. At the other end of the continuum, when it comes to social justice, it's all about a high level of affordability, and therefore the devices involved will have a relatively low level of affordances. So once again, we see that there is a fundamental tension in the field of mobile learning between affordability and affordances. So, we've now looked at 3 agendas for mobile learning and what they mean in terms of affordability and affordances. Let's now turn to 3 case studies of mobile English language learning projects so that we can see how the 3 types of mobile learning and the 3 agendas for mobile learning look when they are put into practice in different contexts. We'll start with the Learn English SMS project in North Africa. This is a British Council project which has been running since 2008 in Sudan and since 2013 in Libya. In Sudan, there are around 65,000 monthly subscribers, and in the very first month in Libya, there were already 20,000. It's a partnership between the British Council and local mobile network operators in Sudan and Libya. The focus is English, specifically vocabulary, grammar, and study tips. SMS messages are sent out to participants in push mode. Quizzes are also available in pull mode in Sudan, though not yet in Libya because the infrastructure is not up to it. It's a BYOD model, that is, a bring your own device model. It means that participants can use whatever mobile devices they have available. Because the messages are sent out in SMS format, it means that even people with very basic phones or low-end feature phones can participate if they wish. This is a project which largely follows a social justice agenda. It's about getting English language learning to the largest number of people possible. The devices are mobile, the learners and the learning experience not so much. But by working within this restricted framework, the British Council has been able to operate across geographical and security limitations and to work within the technological and economic context of North Africa. That is to say, it's been possible to bring English language learning to people who would otherwise have no such opportunities. So this is a very appropriate way of balancing up affordability and affordances in the context of Sudan and Libya. Now let's turn to Brazil. The iPads for Access project has been running at the Casa Thomas Jefferson in Brasilia since 2012. It was originally designed for 104 access students, that is, students from low socioeconomic backgrounds participating in an English language learning program. But ultimately, it has come to benefit the 17,000 regular students at Casa Thomas Jefferson. The focus is on teaching English language at the same time as teaching digital literacies. It takes the format of teacher-selected iOS apps, that is, apps for Apple devices, which are used on more than 200 iPads divided into class sets. At the same time, the Casa Thomas Jefferson has introduced a bring your own device model, where staff and regular students are encouraged to bring their own Apple technology into the classroom. This began very much as a social justice project, improving the English language learning and the 21st century skills, that is, the digital literacies, of students from low socioeconomic backgrounds. But it soon became about improving the 21st century skills of all students at Casa Thomas Jefferson, and ultimately it became about shifting the pedagogy. Here, the devices and the learners are mobile. Students move all the time around their classrooms so that they can interact and collaborate, and they move around the school grounds as well. In terms of digital literacies, this project has shown that it is possible to teach digital literacies and language at the same time. And if you have a look at the website for the Casa Thomas Jefferson, you'll see many excellent examples of the work done by their students. In terms of pedagogy, this project has resulted in shifting attitudes to a BYOD model and technology integration, particularly amongst the staff. And pockets of success have been reported in shifting teaching and learning in a more active, collaborative direction, where the pedagogy is very much underpinned by the available mobile devices. So here's a project where a different set of decisions has been made about how to balance up affordability and affordances in a way appropriate to the context. A combination of funding from the US State Department and from the Kaiser Thomas Jefferson itself, along with a shift towards a BYOD model, has made this project feasible. Finally, let's turn to Singapore. Augmented reality heritage trails were first set up in 2008 by the LDR Consortium with the backing of the Ministry of Education. By March 2013, 80,000 Singaporean school students had taken one of these trails. The idea is that in time, all 300,000 school students will participate. The trails are mostly in English, but some are now available in other languages such as Mandarin and Tamil. The focus is inquiry-based learning integrated with language and literacy, 21st century skills, and digital literacies. So this is a very ambitious project. It takes the form of 35 interactive augmented reality heritage trails for iOS, that is Apple, or Android devices. Students can use the Samsung Note tablets supplied by the LDR Consortium or any other Android or iOS devices. The way it works is this. Students move through Singapore following a learning trail. Their GPS-enabled devices know where they are. When they reach certain locations, information about those locations is pushed to them. It might be in the form of text, images, audio, or video. In other locations, students receive tasks. Sometimes the tasks could be quite simple. Identify the statue in front of you, find out who it is, and upload the correct name into the learning system, where it will be assessed automatically. Other times, the tasks are rather more complex. Interview local shopkeepers or passers-by about historical events which occurred in this location. Sometimes students might even be asked to reenact a historical event, to make a video of that reenactment, and then to upload the video into the learning system so it can be viewed by the teacher and their peers. So, all in all, this is a very sophisticated project. It's a project which set out to transform pedagogy and to enhance students' 21st century skills. The devices, the learners, and the learning experience are all mobile. In terms of digital literacies, it shows once again that it is possible to integrate the learning of digital literacies with other kinds of learning. In terms of pedagogy, it has shifted the way students learn in a more student-centered, active, collaborative direction. So students move in groups around Singapore, they work together to construct their understanding and to complete the tasks that are set for them. It's also shifted the pedagogy in a more situated, embedded, immersive learning direction given the augmented reality element. So here's a project which has made a different set of decisions about balancing up affordability and affordances. Actually, on a global scale, this is a relatively unaffordable project, but in the affluent context of Singapore, it's feasible, and it certainly brings enormous learning benefits for the students. So, those three brief case studies have shown how the three types of mobile learning and the three agendas for mobile learning work in practice in real-world contexts. It's evident that if we want a mobile learning project to be successful, we have to make our own set of decisions about how to balance up affordability and affordances in a way that is most appropriate for our students in our particular context. Thank you very much for your attention to my presentation this morning. I hope it's been of interest and of value to you. If you have any questions or any comments, either now or in the future, please do feel free to get in touch with me through the email address that you can see in the top left-hand corner of the screen, or through my wiki, whose address you can see in the top right-hand corner of the screen. For now, it's goodbye from Perth.